Whoa. Welcome to another Hope, Power, and Healthcare with a whole squad of people. I'm Chris Hemphill, and who else do we have here? Melissa?
Yes, Chris. I keep showing up to this podcast for you.
Wow. I'm just pleased to be your humble co-host, fam.
But we are joined by two incredible guests today, and we can give them a moment to introduce themselves if that works for you.
Yeah.
Who goes first?
I guess I will. I will go first. I'll jump in. I'm Sarah Adler. I'm founder and CEO of Wave, which is a behavioral health technology hybrid company that's really focused on improving high quality mental health care for everyone. So that's our mission. That's what we do. I'm also a professor of psychiatry at Stanford. I'm a former hedge fund analyst, which is a whole different podcast. And I also run an owner-operator business with 30 of the most highly trained, amazingly talented psychotherapists. And we treat the technocracy of Silicon Valley, which is like completely opposed to my access to care mission, but we do great care there too.
Wow. Sorry, I didn't know that there was opposition to that mission. I would love to talk about that on a subsequent episode. Not the subject of this one, but dang, thank you for that bomb at the beginning of this one. We're
no problem.
Repeat guest. I don't think we've had a repeat guest yet, but I think you've just earned that spot.
Just me. I am the repeat guest.
What? You're the hostess with the mostest. I'm just trying to keep up. Allison?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Allison Holzer. I'm the founder and CEO of Aha2Impact, which takes a transformational approach to leadership and organizational growth. I am a master certified coach by trade, started coaching back in 2003, and it's what brought me into the world of leadership development with a lens on applied positive psychology and emotional intelligence. And I partner with several exec ed and MBA schools to provide facilitation and coaching as well. And really just passionate right now about the triad of how to blend transformational leadership with innovation and business strategy, because it seems absolutely essential right now given the state of the world, and how do we enable leaders to be able to do that really effectively and confidently.
Incredible. And I'm sure the fam is being like, what is the theme of Melissa and Chris's episode today? And so we're going to get into that. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. We wanted that introduction so you could hear the power of the angle that we're introducing. And that is navigating the world, like you heard from from Sarah, on taking care of so many people who are leading innovation and things like that. And there's not a huge amount of content out there about, like, if you don't fit into the typical neurotypical mold for how to adjust to different work environments, how to lead and show up for work and things like that. So we want to first open the door to talk about neurospicy leadership, and of course this would be the first of many episodes that we want to do on this, just to like, y'all know our mission at Hope, Power, and Healthcare is to give that drive and innovation to keep going in a very difficult healthcare innovation market, and part of that is, how do I fit into a place where it doesn't look like the puzzle pieces are made for me? So excited to dig into that. But then what we're going to do is also expand, like, another big thing that Melissa said, I believe on the first or second episode, was about this kind of like getting rid of scarcity mentality and how the best things, what was it? The people on the top do what? Was it collaborate?
People
what
on
was
the
that?
top are collaborating, and the people on the bottom are competing. And so I think as we add incredible, talented guests, I think there's interesting ways that we'll see collaboration, even just in tips for our fam, start emerging. And I do think that right now in the industry, we're seeing collaboration, some desired, sometimes forced, right? And I think there are some strategies for our fam to navigate through that. and also to navigate into the places of leadership that they want to be as well. And I think Allison will bring a beautiful perspective on how she enables others to do that. And I kind of have a feeling Sarah probably tackles some of that too in her world.
Great. So we get to see, I mean, honestly, Sarah and Allison just met each other, so we get to see the birth of some collaboration and cross-coaching there. It's going to be weird and cool, and I'm really excited about it.
We're here for it. Absolutely.
Sounds great.
I'm excited to get some of Allison's
also,
we're like, will you coach each other? Our audience will love that.
There's someone who's mentoring us through this whole episode. Is Ophelia Bogoslawski, our dog. So I saw Sarah, your dog was present on the podcast too. So whenever they come back.
Who is Ophelia? I did not approve that guest for this show.
Well, Melissa, do you want to kick it off? You want me to kick it off?
You're going to kick it off. You're so much better than that. I'm just the color commentary. You know that.
No, you just feel that way. You don't know how awesome you are, and people mentioning you. Oh, my goodness.
I feel this way in this gray room. I do, right? It's bringing down my vibe.
Really? Well, I've never been able to say the word great without saying gray, so I think you've got that going for you.
Oh,
So corny. Edit
I like
that out.
I like it.
So punny. So punny this morning, Chris.
So, Sarah, I'm sorry, I see the word doctor on the screen, so I got to say Dr. Adler. That's just how I am.
that.
That's how I roll. Sorry.
yeah. No, don't do that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. In our first conversation, when we met each other, it was a subject on how it's different, on just some of the challenges in leadership when you're from a neurodivergent background. And I really appreciate you being open to have this conversation. We want to help use this as an example of what leadership and work looks like from that perspective. I know there's some deep knowledge and perspectives all over the call from this, but just kicking us off, can you just talk about your experience and your background, where you're neurodivergent and how that's impacted how you show up as a leader?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, I think when you came to me and you were like, do you feel comfortable having this conversation live? And I was like, absolutely, yes, without a doubt. Because I think that I would not be in the position that I'm in right now if I were not neurodivergent. I have ADHD. I was diagnosed at 40 when my son was. And it was like this, oh my God moment where suddenly everything clicked into place about every single struggle I've ever had in my life. Not totally, that's a little bit hyperbolic, which also is a function of my ADHD. I'm hyperbolic and impulsive. But I also can look back on my life and my successes as well as my growth edges and just say, wow, this difference in my brain or this neurospiciness allowed me to tolerate crazy amounts of risk. Now, in my teenage years, that almost got me killed a lot of the time. But in my professional career, when my executive functioning, when my brain sort of came online and matured and caught up, which happens around like 28, 29 with neurospicy people instead of 24, 25 with non-neurospicy people. Suddenly everything clicked and it allowed me to do things like start two businesses or see different contingencies or different pathways and to say, I can't stand working inside this system, so I'm going to leave this system and go build my own. And that definitely takes a level of impulsivity, a level of risk tolerance, a level of need for stimulation that I think has actually powered my being a startup founder. I think if you look around at a lot of startup founders, venture-backed startup founders, if you throw a rock into a crowd, you will absolutely hit one and then it will bounce off one and hit another who has some sort of neurodivergence. Like we all have a little of that flavor. And when my son was diagnosed and then when I was diagnosed and I suddenly had that language and that frame around what this was, I could even supercharge just having that knowledge, and I think Allison will definitely have something to say about this, having this knowledge, understanding who I am, understanding how my brain works differently, allowed me to swim upstream or swim downstream, which was a criticism I received a lot in my life from supervisors and from teachers, is like, why do you always have to swim upstream? Can't you find the thing that's easier for yourself and swim downstream? And that was not my family ethos. And I was like, no, I have to be like pounding against the really hardest thing in the entire world, instead of finding really where my natural strengths are and moving in those directions. And what's really amazing about, I'll talk about challenges too, but what's really amazing about being a startup founder is I can hire people to do the things that are non-preferred and that I really suck at. So I don't have to be super crazy detail oriented and make sure that everything I put out there is spelled correctly. I can have someone else do that for me, or I can hire an ops person who does all of the things that make me insane and crazy and that I'm just mediocre at. So it's actually kind of a perfect fit, I think.
Sarah, you're the bomb dropper on here. I shouldn't use a warlike reference at this time, but you keep saying these powerful things. What happened? What's an example of almost dying as a teenager?
Oh, I mean, when I was a teenager, I used a lot of substances. It's actually quite hilarious when you're in your late 40s and all of your friends are, smoking pot and doing edibles and doing MDMA and microdosing on psilocybin and all of these things in their 40s and 50s, and they're like perimenopausal, menopausal stage. And I'm like, I did all of that. I was like, been there, done that. I did that as a child. I was as a teenager. By the time I got to college, I was sober. And so I engaged in a lot of high-risk behavior. I can tell you stories about that might not be appropriate for this podcast, but maybe they are, I don't know. And so I think that was felt like I was always looking for the next thing that would stimulate me and excite me and keep me going. And that's a very classic ADHD presentation.
And another question that I had, unless Melissa, if you want to jump in, or
well, if it's okay, I saw Allison reacting a couple times, I think, and so Allison, I just wondered, was there any space where you had a reaction to this? I mean, I think, Sarah, I resonated with a lot of what you were saying in terms of maybe the corporate structure isn't always built for me and my best strengths. And Allison, I bet you see that a lot in your work.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I love hearing your story. Dr. Adler, I think something that stood out to me, and I think one of the things I was reacting to, was this concept that you came to around your strengths, right? Neurospicy strengths, and how that then enabled you to think differently about yourself and be different in the world. And, as someone who has worked and coached with many leaders who are neurodivergent, and one of the things that we talk about is how any strength or anything that you might call a weakness or something that gets in the way is also a strength, and vice versa. It just depends on which context it's used in. So sometimes it's about, do I use this quality or this strength or this skill in the right place? And sometimes it's the degree to which it is. So sometimes it's maybe too much creativity, right, at a certain moment versus dialing it back a little bit. And so the degree and the ways in which we use our unique qualities as human beings. And what I was hearing in your story, and I think many people can relate to this, is this almost like, what's the word, like calculation over time of this learning around what are the right situations for these qualities to come forward and to what degree. And then once you've got that, it becomes your superpower, becomes this quality, right? These qualities that you have that you're like, oh yeah, now I can do two businesses at once, and I can do all these things, and I can give the operations to somebody else because I know how to do that. And you figured it out. So to me, it's a message of hope for people who are in the place of maybe seeing those qualities negatively, likely because, and I don't know if you had this experience, but in school, qualities were labeled negatively, or maybe or other situations, or even in work, this might be called disruptive, or whatever labels people might use that are negative. And sometimes leaders or even further back, children might take those on as identities and not also realize the strength side of them. And so that's something that sort of stood out to me in what you were saying. And I think your story can be inspirational to others who are on that journey.
And Melissa, did you have some thoughts on that too?
Well, Chris, you talk all the time about reclaiming the algorithm. He means it from like a data science way, and very much ensuring that we remove bias from how we're using data. And as I hear us all talking, I like, we also have to reclaim our identity, that just because the infrastructure that we're operating in or that we work in may say we need to be different, we don't have to inherit that as truthful, right? Mm-hmm. We can align our strengths and design the life that we want and the work life that we want to look like whatever we want. And that's super exciting.
Yeah. I will say, excuse me, I will say that on the vein of also being vulnerable and not making it all look rosy and super easy and like, oh my gosh, I got a label, and then suddenly, bam, I took off. Like, that was definitely not my experience. What it did really help me do, though, is let go and of some of my own self-judgment that I do think was internalized based on what schools told me or what the outside world told me, and it allowed me to have just a tremendous amount of compassion for. And I will say that was mostly like with most moms, we oftentimes can give ourselves what we need in service of our children. And so I could not hold self-judgment, shame, self-blame around my past and be there for my son who was 7 and learning how to live in this world. And so I had to give myself that compassion and that freedom from those societal labels in order to show up for him and to be like the best mom, to be able to allow him to reframe it. And my kid is amazing, despite he's even more neurospicy than I am, and he has just flourished under a completely different mindset of like, these things are superpowers. And sometimes the autism ADHD world gets annoyed when people say things like that, but I'm a huge believer in it. And it is, just to Allison's point about finding what are the contexts that allow you to really show up as yourself authentically and give you what you need. So.
And Sarah, how has that impacted your day jobs? Have you found yourself, now that you've gone on your journey, has it changed how you bring content or guidance into your businesses? And then, Allison, do you see others, beyond Sarah kind of navigating through this too? I'd kind of love to hear that dialogue go back and forth.
Yeah, so I think, again, really kind of being aware of how my brain works allows me to, I think the number one function is around hiring. And I'd be really curious to know about Allison, what I was saying before about hiring not people who, and this was a mistake that I made earlier in my career, is that I want people around me who are like me versus who complement me. So huge mistake and huge learning on that. And that's something I've learned how to do, is to hire people who really fill my gaps and who are amazing at the things that I just kind of suck at. And letting them go, right? Not being over-controlled and over-controlling about it. In terms of how I bring this content to, oh my gosh, I have so much to say about this, but I'll keep it short. But in terms of how I bring this into the workplace and into our content and into our product, I don't see our workplace and our product as two independent entities. I've always been a huge believer of, like, you practice what you preach, you walk the walk. And so what we do internally, there can't be a line of internal, external. We had this debate early on. It's like, we don't name our product feature something internally and then present it from a marketing perspective to the outside world differently. We talk about everything in a continuous way in order to preserve the integrity of that. So we make space for neurospiciness. We talk about our neurospiciness a lot. Like, we have my head of ops, again, she's my sort of counterpart. She's constantly talking about how neurotypical she is. She's like, because she's surrounded by all of these people who have neurospiciness in other places. And she's like, I'm the neurotypical one. Like, I'm the one, I need to understand how you all are thinking because we're going from here to here without telling you how. And she's like, I need to go here and then here and then here and then here. And we're all like, we've all died of boredom by the time she like gets through that. So there's like conflict and adjustment and adaptation, and really talking about how that looks different helps us then create that content to help other people. So we use our own lived experience. We just normalize, talk about it, don't try to hide it, acknowledge each other's different, acknowledge how hard it is to mask, how hard it is to not be able to show up as your full self. But ultimately, I guess that's why I'm not working in a giant, I had in my last startup where I was not, that it was a lot more challenging for me because it was my first venture-backed startup, and it was a lot more challenging for me because I was so used to doing things like running my own research lab, running my own, like I was in charge all of the time, and then working for someone else was always very, very difficult for me. Like being told I had to fit into a certain constraint or a certain bureaucracy that didn't make sense, that just felt like being a teenager again. I was like, wait, but your rules don't make sense, but it's more efficient to do it this way. And like sometimes you just have to like play ball, right? You just have to kind of learn how to get along. So
I love what you're sharing, and what it's bringing up for me is this concept of culture and the culture that you've been building in your organizations, and how important that is in terms of how people show up, right? And so you talked about transparency in the culture and really encouraging people to be open about their differences, how they're feeling when they're masking, all of those things. And I think that's so important that I think in many, and I think it's harder in larger organizations sometimes to hold that kind of level of transparency and honesty and openness. Some can do it, but it's harder, right? Because it feels like there's more risk potentially. But when organizations are able to have that kind of a culture, I think it does breed greater inclusion, belonging, right? Because you can be yourself, and then on the days that, may be harder for you, it's okay, it's accepted more. So that sort of stood out to me in what you were saying. And the other thing that I was thinking as you were sharing is this concept too of imposter syndrome that I think, spicy and typical all people, I think, experience to some degree throughout their careers and at different times. This concept that I don't belong here, I don't have the skills for this, I don't know what I'm doing, why am I here? All of those things. And that underlying kind of fear and uncertainty that people have with that imposter syndrome, I think is a common feeling. And so how people, how you create a culture that helps people sort of move through that and feel like, okay, we all feel that way, and we all have these days where we feel like we're not sure what we're doing, or, maybe I need some help with something and I need to partner with somebody else to have that help. So it creates a culture that enables people to really move through those very natural feelings that I think all of us have.
Allison, sorry, I was going to ask a question. Chris, I'll let you ask.
Go ahead, go.
This is also part of my neurospiciness. I'm always going to be the first person to jump in. I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to
So usually, Sarah, that's me, right? So it's going to be interesting to see who can pull the trigger the fastest and get it, right?
I like that battle going on.
I'm like literally the one in class. Yes, hand up.
I was going to ask Allison. Sorry.
No, that's you. That's you.
And
we can edit all this, so it's fine. Go.
Perfect. I was going to ask if you feel like, because I think we've tended, this is also just a facet of my being a clinical psychologist, right? It's a clinical psychologist leader. Mm-hmm. There's a facet, I think, also, though, where showing up as your full self and then having an expectation that that's going to be accommodated can get dicey. Yeah. Right? And doesn't work and can actually disrupt the culture. And so I think that was like, how do you set boundaries and expectations within the culture appropriately where, I can show up and be like my all-female team, right? Like if someone has PMS, like the whole team knows about it. And that is probably not going to be appropriate at Cigna, right? I'm sure, I don't know, Melissa, if you had that experience of showing up into a meeting and saying like, I've got PMS, I just want everyone to know, like that's not going to happen.
Definitely no. I mean, maybe some smaller group meetings, but like not the MBR or any of that. Yes.
But it's been normalized as just even in terms of like we show up and every meeting starts with a very brief check-in. And that goes from every single meeting in my company has at least a check-in of like, where is everyone right now in time and space on like whatever metric we decide. And that goes up to the board. Like I force my board to do the same thing because I want everyone to know that like if board member X, if Ling is in a really bad mood that day, like we all know, we all have that data. And so it puts us on a more even playing field. But I feel like, I could get criticized that you take that too far, right? To be too accommodating or too...
I don't know. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, I think at the end of the day, when I think about culture and organizations, right, it's really defined as just norms and behaviors. There's no right, wrong, good or bad culture. It's just what the culture is. And so then as a leader, the question is what kind of culture do you want to create? And in that case, I think it's sort of as the leader, as you're thinking through, okay, is this disruptive or is this more helpful than disruptive? And you're sort of leading the charge in that way in terms of, deciding kind of at what point, maybe we cross the line and set new kind of expectations around what our norms and behaviors are as a group. But I love the concept of the check-in, particularly because, and I'm sure, this is your world too, right, as a clinical psychologist, but as a psychologist, that checking in and simply expressing emotions and saying them out loud, I am feeling X, whatever that is, then minimizes the chance that emotion is going to have an unintended impact on the person and how they're showing up. It's likely to reduce the impact of the emotion. So if they're frustrated, irritated, anxious, sad, whatever that is, that might still be there, but not to the same degree, and they'll be more aware and intentional about how they're navigating that emotion in the situation. And so I love that you set up the meetings that way, and it's one of those things that I will coach often leaders to do, to think about how are we intentionally setting the tone for meetings, but also even just for important conversations, because how we set it up at the beginning really sets the stage for whether we're going to achieve success in terms of however we define success for that conversation or that meeting. And bringing even just 30 seconds or 2 minutes of intentionality to that kind of set up the stage, it really can put things on a different path. Right? And yet we don't often do that. A lot of times we just show up to meetings and we don't think about it or prepare or think about the ideal outcome or how we want to feel or how we want others to feel or what we want the dynamic to be or the culture in that meeting to be. And so I think it's really great that you're bringing all of those things to your team.
And I love this already. And so, see, Chris, I got in before you. And so what's really interesting that I find, is Allison, you've had personally, just kind of, I know from knowing you, over a change over the last 6 months, 8 months, a lot of changes. And so when we think about defining success and defining culture, how have you thought about that in terms of your new business? And can you tell us a little bit about that journey? And then I'd love, Sarah, don't therapize her, but I would just love your reaction to some of that, having gone through this already for you.
No, happy to share the journey. And it really started back in August 2nd of 2024 when we were packing up for Boston. My husband and I, we were about to go with our kids, but we had to pick them up at camp on the way. And so the car was packed, we headed out. It was a beautiful kind of summer August day. Went to Ninja Warrior Camp, walked in to pick them up, and I get a call on my phone that's not actually a call, it's a FaceTime, which is weird, from this particular person who's my next door neighbor, because we don't call each other on the phone or FaceTime. We'll text each other once in a while, but it's very unusual kind of behavior. So I think, okay, it's probably a butt dial, but I'll pick it up. And I pick it up, and she is frantic. She's crying and she's screaming and she's saying, a tornado just hit our neighborhood. A tornado, there's water coming out of your house. There's a tree in your house. And she starts showing this video going back and forth like this. And I just see these trees everywhere and branches. And she's crying. And it's just this intense panic. And so, of course, as you can imagine, we all get in the car. We drive back, a 15-minute ride. And by the way, where we were, blue skies, no weather event, 15 minutes away, took us over an hour to get home. Right? Because of all the trees that were down, we had to keep going around different obstacles to get there. And the whole way I'm panicking and worried. Fast forward, when we get there, it's the entire neighborhood. There's just, it looks like, out of a movie, right? Where there's some natural disaster, there's just stuff everywhere. So fortunate that nobody was hurt. Like, first and foremost, nobody was hurt. But 400 homes in our town were damaged. And many of them very significantly. We were out of our home for 6 months. And what we later learned is that what created this destruction was something called a microburst, which is a weather event where intense air pressure kind of comes together and then creates this shooting fast air that can be over 100-mile-an-hour winds. It actually picked up planes at the airport, at Simsbury Airport, so that's how high the winds were. And it has rain and winds, 100-mile-an-hour, blowing into people's homes and knocking trees down, only lasted like 8 minutes. So similar to tornado, but sort of sideways and not twirling. Needless to say, this microburst threw us into a situation where we were under a tremendous amount of stress, trying to figure out what are we going to do, where are we going to live, how are we going to navigate insurance, how are we going to line up contractors when 400 people in the town are also lining up the exact same kind of contractors? What's this going to look like? What are we going to do? It was just panic. And I reached a point about a week after this occurred where I just said to my husband at one point, I was like, I am going to break. Like, this is too much. I cannot manage this. It was just coming at all, because we were also both working full time and doing all the things that we do. So we came together and we made an agreement, and we came up with these 3 guidelines to how we were going to navigate. The first we call Team Holzer, which is we are in it to win it together. We are supporting each other 100%, right? We are got each other's backs. And we just agreed in that moment that that's where we were going to be. The second one was around, I call it knowing the horizon, which is, pilots can fly in the dark. And they can fly in the dark because they know the destination, it's programmed in, right? And they kind of know the path and the destination, so they don't have to see it day to day. That's what we needed, because our day to day was chaotic. So we needed that horizon. And so we created it for ourselves. We created a horizon 6 months out, what we were aiming for. And then the final one was around, if you all have seen the movie Contact or read the book Contact.
Can you give us a high level?
It's a sci-fi movie. Jodie Foster's in it as the main actress, and they kind of they go through wormholes and meet aliens. They're basically trying to talk to extraterrestrial life. And her father worked with her as a child to try to communicate with extraterrestrial life. And the beginning and end of the movie start with the same quote, which is, "Small moves, Ellie, small moves." And the idea being that if you're going to talk to extraterrestrial life, right, you got to be really patient and just every day, put the signal out there and see if it gets there. So same idea. We need to focus on small moves. We could not get overwhelmed by the big picture, because we literally were having to make 100 to 200 decisions a day, talking to all these different people. Like, we just had to take it one step at a time.
Sarah, isn't this also an ADHD tip? I feel like I see this on my ADHD memes that come through, right?
Oh.
Practice consistency. Keep going, Allison.
I feel like this is a startup founder handbook of a day to day. That's just what I 100%. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So no, that's totally true, Sarah. It's like that's where I landed after all of this experience was, what can I take from this and now share with others, and both practice myself, but share with others, leaders, organizations, because we all experience microbursts. We all experience them, personal and professional, and they throw us off. Healthcare experiencing many microbursts in the market, right? Think of all the situations where these high pressure, high change, quick, unexpected situations occur. How do we navigate through them skillfully? So all of that is a backdrop to say that was an original impetus to then make a change myself. where, as Melissa mentioned, I'm a multiple founder. If you count the business that I started when I was 8, which was a soap carving business that I sold soap door to door that I carved in the shape of horses for the Kentucky Derby. And it was actually a good lesson because a local department store tried to pick up my soaps, and then I realized I would have to drop out of first grade to begin a business, and realized that maybe I needed to change directions. But it was a good lesson. But I had co-founded a business in 2012, and realized after this microburst moment that I was ready for my next venture. I was ready for my next opportunity for stretch, growth, and so I made the decision to then leave and relaunch a new firm which I mentioned before, Aha2Impact. And part of the impetus of that is around taking some of these concepts from the microburst moment. How do we innovate? How do we manage these situations skillfully? And to really turn that into, as I have, an area of practice and work with organizations to be able to do that effectively with their leaders and their culture. And so that was really the original inspiration. It was a personal kind of change moment. And, the cool thing about when your house gets ripped up to the seams is that you can begin to see things differently, and you can create differently, you can innovate differently when you aren't tethered to the past, when you aren't tethered to the current structure. And that was an important lesson that I think organizations and leaders, right, understand as well. That when we're tethered to the past or our current structures, we don't see the possibilities in the same way. And so microbursts are a way, right, they can be a way to open up our minds to see things differently and to build forward with greater innovation than we would otherwise. And that was a lesson learned, and one that I'm carrying forward as I'm working with leaders today.
I don't think the word microburst can ever leave my vocabulary after hearing that story. And it makes me wonder, like helping so many people and coaching through so many of these scenarios, what are some common microburst moments that or like the top one that you'd like to share with our audience of healthcare innovators?
Oh yeah, wow. I mean, in healthcare, it's there are so many disruptions, and I think right now the biggest, of course, is technology. And what I'm seeing a lot with leaders, and I've been working with, I've worked over the last couple of years with healthcare leaders on this process of creating innovation pitches and really looking for real opportunities, grassroots within the organization, to come up with ideas, almost like an internal accelerator or kind of pitch kind of process. And it's been really exciting to see how they're thinking about tapping into technology and AI to leverage different challenges that they're facing. One of the ones that kind of hit home for me personally, as my father navigated through a difficult situation with cancer and sadly lost his battle with cancer. And one of the things, so it speaks to me very personally, that leaders were talking about is how do we reduce the time from when somebody gets diagnosed to when they actually receive care, and all the barriers and obstacles that are in the way. That phone calls, waiting for somebody to call you. Do you call them? What number is it going to come on? What if the person who needs the appointment is not technology savvy? How do we think about that? What if they can't drive to the appointment? All these barriers along the way. And how do we truly innovate to change this problem? Because we know that the sooner somebody gets help, the better the diagnosis, the better, or the prognosis, right, that they're going to be able to manage through it. And yet it's a huge challenge. And so I've seen really interesting, leaders think about this in different ways to how to tackle problems like that. But there's so many challenges in healthcare right now.
Yeah, we're navigating through that a little bit, kind of in my extended family. I'm very grateful to my mom, who took the role, and I bet, Allison, that was probably a role you picked up. Sarah, it's probably a role you see a lot in some of your jobs, but you have to be persistent. You have to be the care navigator for this. You have to, thank goodness for ChatGPT now, who can upload your PET scans and create a report and be able to, tell you what to do next, or even generate a list of questions for your clinicians. But I do think that's so spot on, that there is still so many moments to innovate, and so many people trying to tackle these barriers to care. White House, I used to say all the time back in my payer days, in the mental health space, it's usually 10 years on average from symptom onset to diagnosis in the mental health space.
Yeah.
And that number hasn't really shifted.
Yeah. Yeah, and so many talented people out there who want to solve these problems. So it's not for lack of having really talented people. I think the question is, how do we enable them to have the space and time to really innovate? Because of course, business as usual takes over, or tends to take over. So how do we create the space and time for them to innovate? And then how do we tackle what sometimes I think is the biggest challenge for innovation, which is the fear, the underlying fear that people have around breaking out and trying something different, putting forward an idea where they maybe don't know all the answers, but they think it might help, right? And kind of putting themselves in that vulnerable place of not having all the answers, exposing themselves to maybe new people across the organization, when they're pitching ideas. All these situations that could enable and support innovation also can produce fear that will get in the way for leaders to want to take those steps.
So, Sarah, it makes me wonder, with all of the people that you're working with and talking to, navigating these challenges, you're probably hearing some microbursts too. And I wonder if, as part of our live coaching concept, we can bring up a microburst, and Allison, you coach through it, just as an example.
Let's see. I think the thing that resonates for me most deeply, or where my fear as a founder always comes, and it's such a pattern at this point that it's almost a joke, because with my team, is that and it actually makes me think, going back to Melissa's original point, which is the big boys collaborate and the kindergartners are competing. But I do feel fear sometimes when I'll read, and these are not even my competitors. They're like so much bigger and so much more behemoth than I do. And so I'm always thinking about how to collab, but they don't even know we exist. And sometimes I'll read that one of the really big players is doing what we're doing. And I see on their LinkedIn that they've just released something that I think, ideas are a dime a dozen. It's about execution, right? It's there are no new ideas. Doesn't mean there's no new innovation, but and sometimes I'll have this moment where I'm I feel real fear. I'm oh my gosh, this is how are we different? How are we special if everyone is doing in that world of there are really no new ideas? And I'll call my CTO, or I'll Slack my CTO. I'll do it, and I'll say, I'll be oh my God, did you see this? And then he's like, Sarah, stay the course. We're doing this right. We're executing properly. Don't worry about it. And I'm no, we have to move faster. Come on, we have to get out there. We have to do a press release. We have to do LinkedIn. I'm very reactive to that. And he's but it happens probably 5 times a year. We have these microbursts internally that I'm creating. By the way, I take full ownership that I'm creating the microburst, which is
well,
good to know.
I'm gonna defend you on that, right? The competitors' messaging created the microburst for you, and then you felt the need to react, which I think is actually a good business practice to say, should we react to this, right? I mean, it's a headwind, a tailwind, it's a wind, right? And then you have to say, let's analyze this wind to say, I actually think you're reacting appropriately, as long as, maybe, I don't know, Allison will tell me differently, but that's normal, right? Someone else puts something else out, it changes the competitive matrix.
And what's really interesting about it's totally true, but what's also really interesting about it is that one thing I will give myself credit for is I only go to my CTO. I know my team, and I know who can tell. If I go to a different person on my team, that could change our OKRs without even my meaning to, right? Because there's a vacuum, right, that a CEO lives in, is that you have to be very careful about what you say, because you could say one thing in an offhanded comment in a one-on-one, and suddenly your product just shifted because they think the thing that
Beautiful
you're
point.
Yeah.
brainstorming. And so I have to be so I only go to my CTO and I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, to your point, Melissa, beautifully, like, he's like, okay, let's take a step back and analyze, do we have to react? And he's very much on the, like, we never have to react. So we have a really nice backboard to play ping pong.
Our house is ripped open. He's like, you know, a window got open.
Yeah. Or he's like, focus on what was your third point? I'm going to mess this up. But the third point is, like, know the horizon, like, focus on the horizon. Don't worry about the cloud that's like 50 feet in front of you. Focus on the horizon, focus on the destination. And so that's really, really helpful. But I do feel intense fear and, like, real fear in those moments, which, again, to your point, Melissa, like, from a psychological perspective, creates an action urge. So that's maybe appropriate. But Allison, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, well, and also fear, right, is all about real or perceived danger. And so, like, in those situations, what would be the real or perceived danger that you know that you're noticing?
Well, but I think that that's a really interesting thing. I'm going to take this to an even deeper level. I think on some level, that's where we as leaders and as founders have to be really careful, because there may, to Melissa's point, be real threat, but there's also a level of mindfulness and awareness that I need to know about myself around, does this mean, like, I don't know, I can get really deep on this, but does this mean, like, okay, maybe this is going to impact our business from day to day, maybe it's not, but, like, am I really reacting to, like, oh my gosh, what if our product isn't different? And that means I'm not special. Like, you know, it could be some deep internal process that has something to do with my failed lemonade business at age 6 that I need to be aware of, and mindfulness of my own, right, like, reactions, because
yeah.
And what's the opposite of imposter syndrome, right? Because I think you're describing that a little bit in sometimes you don't know the gravitas of your edicts. And so when you, as the CEO, you were right to say, hey, as the CEO, when I, you know, say it's raining, the whole organization grabs umbrellas. But, you know, it might not have been rain, right? You know, like the sprinkler could have been on, you know? And so how do you realize that your voice carries weight and make sure that your weight is being leveraged appropriately in the organization? Allison, do you have tips for us on that? Because that's definitely an area that I struggle. Like, people probably aren't listening to me when I say this, and then, oops, they actually were.
Yeah. Well, I think what it brings up for me too is this concept of, and maybe Sarah, you talk about this in your work too, but, like, I'm always calibrating or thinking about the degree of the emotion. Like, is it a 1 or a 10 or somewhere in between? And then there's, like, the feeling of it and the expressing of it, right? And so that, like, you could be at a 10 in terms of feeling it, like, really feeling a sense of panic. But then as a leader, and to your point, Melissa, how do I communicate in ways, you know, that people can hear it? Maybe the choice is either I'm not going to communicate at all, or it might be I'm going to communicate this, but at a 3. Because my team cannot handle me at a 10, and nor do I want to create that kind of sense of panic around them, right? But I want to be authentic about how I'm feeling. I don't want to, like, hold it in or not, you know, if you decide that that's a situation that you think you should let the broader team in or your CTO. So I feel like there's always this, like, calibration of degree and then internal, external, like internal feeling, communication of feeling, that you can sort of play with when you're thinking about how to have that kind of impact on others that you want to have. And I also think about storytelling, Melissa, like, you know, I think that's an important place that leaders can lean into in terms of both creating the horizon. So you were talking about, like, how, like, what's the meaning that we're making, or how are we understanding the situation from a story-based perspective? Either it's a story that we're creating together, or it could be a story that you're referencing that you've experienced to share something personal about yourself that will help set the stage for how people understand what's going on. So I think both of those are places that you could play in terms of you know, sort of gravitas and having that opposite of imposter syndrome, confidence kind of impact with communication. Off the cuff, those are a couple things that come to mind.
I love that, Allison, Sarah. And then for those of us that are neuro-spicy potentially, that might struggle with, you know, pausing in the moment to, you know, create that weight, are there tips that you have for us that we could share with our fam to help them navigate through some of that as they may want to apply some of these tips or that like pause moment?
Yeah, I think that's where I leverage my CTO. I also know my organization and I know who can handle what. I know who's going to react with me, who's going to go up with me, who can just be like, get your stuff together. Sarah, I don't know if we can curse on this podcast, so I'm going to just go with not.
You can.
We can, all the words.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We don't
I was
words.
like, yeah, I have to mask if I can't curse, and I know you wouldn't want that for me. So, so knowing, like, right, I do go to my one person, but there are some things that I do really just have to force myself and practice to make certain rules and regulations for myself, which is, and I think this goes exactly to what Allison's saying, and back to that mindfulness and that check-in, if I'm anywhere over a 5 in terms of my emotional intensity or my emotional energy in a not pro-social positive way, in any sort of like negative valence, negative affect, just don't. Unless I'm sharing my fear, and this kind of goes back to like therapy speak, but unless I have someone, I'm saying like, I'm feeling this way, not, so really grounding it in myself, not, oh my gosh, we have to do this. Because I think back to Allison's like brilliant framework that I just love so much around like being a team, right? That this is Team Holzer, is like this is Team Wave. And part of that is really understanding who's around you, how they react, what their individual nuances and differences are, and showing up in a way that respects their limitations and their strengths. And so really just knowing your team. And I think that's really part of being on a team is constantly being mindful of who else is around you, how they function best, how to set them up for success.
I want to just quickly flip it to a employee/individual contributor perspective. Because what you're hearing on the podcast is like leaders are having to figure out and adjust to how they share and disseminate information because they know different people are going to react in a different way. So you might have, as an individual contributor, you might hear your leader venting about something and saying, oh, this needs to change and that needs to change. And they're not necessarily trying to create a to-do list for you. Some people might go out of that conversation, like to Sarah's point, and change the whole product strategy. But you really want to confirm, because I know that those complaints can fire up that anxiety too. But if you have that relationship where you start confirming like what the real is there, and maybe even opening the door and being more open about giving feedback to the leader, then that creates a much better relationship than just thinking that everything that they say is always a to-do list, because that just might not be what they're trying to communicate in that moment.
I love that. And I feel like that's, I don't know, you have to check with my team because this could be, a leader bias fallacy. But and I think, and it's interesting because I think also in the narrative of like what it means to be a female leader, a woman leader, which you're told like, don't say these things, right? And I take the opposite approach of like, I'm going to lean into my female leadership. There's a whole gender conversation that I'm being unnuanced about, and I understand that. But saying things like, you're not supposed to do, right? If you want to mask and you want to take on like traditional male leadership roles, you're not supposed to end things with a question. You're not supposed to say like, give me feedback on that, or do you think I'm right, or challenge me on that. And I lean into those, even if it might not, it down powers me, because I think that I don't want to be like, ultimately I am the decider at the end of the day, but I want to be as an informed decider as I possibly can. And so if my team does not feel like they can give me information, push back on my thinking, tell me that I'm fucking wrong, like we have a huge problem. And so I lean into some of those more like traditional female leadership things, like, yeah, at the end of the, like, tell me, where do you think I'm wrong? Do you have questions for me? How can I help you? Tell me where my thinking is. I'm flawed. Like, I'm constantly pulling for that feedback. Also to try to create a culture where feedback is welcome, non-threatening, non-defensive. And yeah, it can slow things down a little without a doubt. But like ultimately, I think it creates a healthier, more functional culture.
So I know we are rolling out of time, unfortunately. If our fam we should do another part 2. But if our fam wants to get in touch with both of you, to learn more, to work with you, explore all sorts of different things, how should they find you? Allison, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn, and it's under AA Holzer. So you can find me there. And in terms of my company, Aha2Impact, you can find our website at www.aha2impact.com, and you can also email me directly at Allison at aha2impact.com, which has spelled with 2 L's. Allison
And
with 2
Allison,
L's.
do you want people for personal leadership coaching? Do you want organizations, or both?
Really both. I mean, I work with executive leaders and do executive advisory and coaching, and work with a significant amount in healthcare. In terms of organizational partnerships, I tend to work most closely with talent development and talent leadership. So talent leaders who are in the healthcare space would love to connect with you as well.
Amazing. And Sarah, same question to you.
LinkedIn, I think it's Dr. Sarah Adler, Dr. Sarah Adler, Sarah with an H. And my email is my first name, sarah@wavelife.io. And yeah, I'm easy to find, definitely.
And are you seeking more individuals? Do you want more business partnerships? What are you seeking?
Oh, what are we looking for? So right now we are mostly, our big push right now is we're contracting with payers and employers. We are selling directly into payers and employers. Our value prop is quite simple, is that we can give you measurable outcomes that drive down ROI or cost savings for payers or for employers. We can create a healthier workforce as well as taking care of the individual. So some of those nuances that I was talking about, how the individual and the culture connect, make us just a really great benefit team for employers. And then with payer partners, we are really just able to provide massive cost savings on the mental health SUD book of business. Where we're providing services with measurable outcomes, super data driven, so that you can actually justify using our services. So, and we know payers are getting horribly crunched right now, and so we're here to help.
Well, y'all, it was so exciting to hear. The whole time y'all were talking, I was just thinking about, we are in a new decade where people are opening up, and we're slowly seeing mental health being destigmatized. We're seeing different styles of leadership growth. Melissa, I include you heavily in new ways and new styles in growing and interacting with companies. But there's gotta be some fuel. Everybody who's a listener, y'all know we want to get into what's the fuel behind it all? Is there some music or movies, pop culture? What's been heavy on that radar in the last couple of weeks?
We play this game every episode, and so it's basically all you have to do is share something. It could be a song, it could be a show that you're watching, it could be something that just brings you a burst of joy somewhere in today, a micro burst of joy, if you will. So my micro burst of joy, I'll model it, has been the show Pluribus on Apple TV. Without spoiling it, it's like a hive mind show. It's kind of like The Walking Dead for mind takeover. And so you have to watch it, and then we can talk about it when I'm not spoiling it, but bringing me so much joy, and I'm just going, what am I watching? I love it. Bring on the next episode.
I trust every Melissa Riley TV series. She put me on The Handmaid's Tale. Yes, 100%.
Yes.
Good show. All right, so I'll just share the first thing that popped into my head, microburst of joy, which is that when I work with leadership teams and groups, I tend to, one of the first things to do is ask each of them to contribute a song that brings them joy or fires them up or gets them pumped up. And I now have these lists of playlists from all these different leadership groups and organizations over the years that are these pump up playlists. And I absolutely love going in if I'm feeling the need, and I go into one of them, and it takes me back to that moment of working with them. But it also it's a total diversity of music, because they are songs that I would never pick myself necessarily. Some of them are, but a lot of times it's new music, and I love it. I like it to get into their worlds a little bit and just have fun.
We want
So
this
something you
for
can do
our-
with any of your teams. Yeah, something you can do on your own.
We do have our own playlist. Thank you for the advertisement. We will gladly take all of that and add it.
Great.
Sarah, what about you?
This is a really hard one for me because what I'm watching is completely horrifically embarrassing, and I listen to whatever music my kids are listening to. I read whatever books my kids are listening to for the most part, so I can, have things to talk about with them. Right now, my daughter, who is in Chicago, who is in 19, she's working for on a political campaign, taking a gap year. Is really into Love Island Australia. And so I will say that I'm watching Love Island Australia with my daughter, which I'll try to pull this into full circle. But I do think it is absolutely a guilty pleasure. But as a psychologist and as a leader, it is the ultimate, like, what happens when you put a bunch of people into a fishbowl, like a corporate environment, where they are forced to play out these individual versus systemic dynamics, curation by producers all the time. So I actually think, yes, I'm turning this into I'm pulling this back in somehow. I actually think it's like incredible from a dynamic perspective and super engaging and horrific and awful and everything that's wrong with our culture at the same time. But that in a nutshell is that's real. So, yeah. It does bring me joy to get to sit on the phone with her.
I'll start by saying,
Just edit that out.
I'll start by saying that I have absolutely no guilt in enjoying Love Island UK. Me and my girl, we watch it and it's dope.
Thank you.
And my 100. We validate that here. Mine is this artist clipping. It's a rap group. David Diggs. He played. I think he played he played Aaron Burr in the Hamilton performance. But then he went into this weird avant-garde rap trio that does wild, off-the-wall stuff. Like in 2017, they put out an album called Splendor and Misery, where if you're a sci-fi Octavia Butler Afrofuturism fan, etc., it's a rap album about a spaceship that falls in love with someone on the crew, and all kinds of very strange things happen across the universe. Well, a month ago, I dropped the link. We'll have the link in the show notes. But they came out with this NPR Tiny Desk episode. They were featured on NPR Tiny Desk. And they have all kinds of crazy things, like they're playing staplers and office equipment while rapping over it. The office equipment is making a dope beat, and they're rapping over it. And it's just the most amazing, intricate thing that you've ever seen. And I just love clipping. Such good people, good performers.
Very cool.
You always surprise me, Chris.
So cool.
Always something new and avant-garde, and I love it.
Hey, this is an avant-garde podcast. Like, we're talking about new ways of doing business and all that. It doesn't have to be out of a synthesizer like that to be avant-garde and cool.
We could have a stapler. It's going to be fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The Hope, Power, and Staplers podcast. Yes.
On that clip, we should probably end it.
Appreciate y'all. So happy to have this episode. I feel way uplifted, and hopefully you get this and another dose of that next week, y'all. Thank you.